Imagine someone offered you this deal. You work longer hours, eat worse, get sicker, live crammed together with crowds of strangers, and on top of all that, you now owe taxes to a boss you never chose. Would you take it? Your ancestors didn't. They ran. And yet, here we are. So sit with this question. What if the first governments in history weren't the beginning of progress, but one of the biggest mistakes humanity ever made? Let me guess what you learned in school. In the beginning, humans had it rough. They chased animals, starved, feared the dark. Then someone discovered farming. People settled down, planted crops, built cities. Kings appeared, then laws, then governments. And finally, humanity climbed out of the mud and started up the ladder of progress. Makes sense, right? Government means order. Order means civilization. Civilization means a better life. It's a beautiful story. The problem is, the bones tell a different one. When archaeologists dug up the skeletons from this so-called Great Leap Forward, they expected to find healthier people. They found the opposite. The humans who lived after farming took hold were, on average, shorter than their hunter-gatherer grandparents. Their teeth were more rotten. Their bones showed signs of hunger, of anemia, of diseases that simply didn't exist before. We trade the wildlife for the civilized life, and we end up weaker, sicker, and shorter? This is where the pretty story starts to crack. First layer, the diet shrank. The hunter-gatherer ate everything: fruit, roots, fish, meat, seeds, dozens of different species. If one food source vanished, there were 10 others. But the farmer bet everything on a tiny handful of plants: wheat, rice, corn. Plenty of food, sure, but monotonous and poor in nutrients. And if the harvest failed, there was no plan B. Welcome to mass famine, a little bonus that farming threw in for free. Second layer, the diseases arrived. Pack a lot of people into a small space, with garbage, sewage, and domesticated animals living right next door, and you've built the perfect paradise for germs. Measles, flu, tuberculosis, smallpox. A huge share of history's great epidemics were born right there. They jumped from animals to us and spread because, for the first time, there was a crowd packed tight enough to infect. The small nomadic band never caught those diseases. The city did. Third layer, inequality became the rule. In a hunter-gatherer band, it was hard for anyone to pile up much more than anyone else. You can't hoard wealth when you're always on the move. And if some guy tried to boss everyone around, the group just ignored him or walked away. But grain changed everything. Grain ripens at a set time. It's easy to count, easy to measure, easy to store in a granary, which means it's taxable. Someone can walk up, look at your stockpile and say, "Part of this is mine." It's no coincidence that the first states were all built on top of grain fields. Where there was grain, there was a surplus. Where there was a surplus, someone showed up to collect. And to collect, that someone needed scribes, needed soldiers, needed walls. Fourth layer, freedom shrank. This whole machine needed one thing to run: people who couldn't just leave. The first states were obsessed with holding on to their population, with walls that sometimes did more to keep people in than to keep enemies out. Forced labor, serfdom, even slavery showed up alongside the first governments. And what did a lot of people do when they got the chance? They ran. They left civilization behind and went to live outside the walls. Those barbarians the empires loved to look down on? Many were just former citizens who did the math and decided life out there was better. For most of history, being free meant escaping the government, not being protected by it. So, were the first governments a mistake? Depends on who you ask. For the ordinary person back then, sicker, hungrier, and more controlled, it was probably a terrible deal. That's why so many resisted, ran, or fought not to be swallowed up. But for the group as a whole, big cities, with armies and granaries, ended up winning. Not because they offered a better life, but because they were bigger, more numerous, and harder to defeat. Civilization didn't win by being kinder, it won by being stronger. And that's where the delicious discomfort of this story lives. The world you live in today, with its governments, its laws, and its taxes, isn't the happy ending of a ladder that only went up. It's the result of a strange gamble, full of losses, that just happened to work well enough to keep standing. You thought civilization was a gift humanity received. Maybe it was a trap we never managed to climb back out of.